I have already covered one-handed axes and maces, but I did not talk about their two-handed counterparts. They actually differ a lot. From what I have read online, players do not really like these weapons much, and consider this weapon group to be one of the worst ones. So let's dive deep into this topic and see what's up. Two-handed axe mace is an average difficulty skill that defaults to axe mace -3, pole arm -4 and two-handed flail -4. An immediate downside is that there is no fast draw specialty for this skill. Let's take a look at the weapon table in GURPS low tech. The first of these weapons appear on TL0, which is nice. This means that you are free to give such weapons to cavemen or very primitive barbarians. Damage is where two-handed axes and maces shine. Their damage is on par with pole arms and sometimes even higher. All three melee damage types are covered: crushing, cutting, impaling. So not only you deal a lot of damage, you are also quite versatile. Reach is either 1 yard or 1 to 2 yards. In the latter case, it takes a ready maneuver to change reach, which is not good. While reach itself is good, I strongly recommend buying the Reach Mastery perk to change reach as a free action. All two-handed axes and maces are unbalanced. You cannot use them to parry if you have already swung it this turn, or vice versa. That's not good, but there are ways to mitigate this downside. Cost is quite low, so almost any character can afford such a weapon. Low cost also makes it easier to apply quality modifiers. Weight is generally high. This means that many of these weapons will be able to break many other weapons on a parry. Sure, this might affect your encumbrance, but if you plan to use such a weapon, you probably have high strength. Finally, we get to the strength requirement, which is where players often become disappointed. See the double dagger symbol? It means that this weapon not only requires two hands, but also becomes unready after attacking, forcing you to take a ready maneuver to make it combat ready again, even if you use defensive attack. This also makes rapid strikes impossible, I believe, but still allows all-out attack double. How can one deal with this downside? The first option is to have very high strength. If you have 1.5 times the listed strength rounded up, then the weapon does not become unready after an attack. This requires a lot of investment. For an ST11 weapon, you will need ST17. For an ST12 weapon, you will need ST18. Generally speaking, having strength this high benefits the concept of a damage dealer, but you might have had plans to spend your points on something else. You should remember that for melee weapons, strength requirement is striking strength, not lifting strength. If your GM allows that, you can buy striking strength instead of raising your overall strength. It is not 100% clear whether the huge weapons perk helps or not, but I would allow it to add to the effective strength for this purpose. The second option is relatively new and unknown. GURPS Monster Hunters Power-Ups 1 introduced new modifiers for the extra attack advantage that allow you to take a ready maneuver instead of attacking. If you can only take a ready maneuver, then this is a plus 0% enhancement. Basically, this turns extra attack into extra ready. A plus 100% version allows you to use the extra attack either as an attack or as a ready. 25 points is a lot, but this is a generic ready maneuver that can be used for anything. Extra attack has the single skill minus 20% limitation, and I see nothing wrong with applying it to ready. But that would mean that you can also use this extra ready maneuver to, for example, draw the weapon, stow it away, or change grips. I suggest increasing the limitation value to minus 40% to let you use this extra ready maneuver only to ready your two-handed axe or mace after attacking. This would make this ability cost 15 points. Might seem like a lot, but it's definitely cheaper than buying 6 extra levels of strength. But do not forget that it's still up to the GM to allow this approach. In terms of customization options, two-handed axes and maces are the same as one-handed ones. You can either check my previous video or open GURPS Low-Tech Companion 2 to see all the options. What techniques are useful with the two-handed axe mace skill? Armed grapple is a good one because it gives you more options for dealing with enemies in close combat. The close combat technique is another one that might come in handy for that. Feint is also something that you should consider investing in, because landing an attack is much more important when you cannot attack every turn. Some weapons such as scythe and great axe can be used to hook, so the hook technique might be a good addition to your arsenal. Since you are wielding a two-handed weapon, it is more reasonably to hook limbs to unbalance an opponent and set up a finishing blow. Finally, two-handed axes and maces are long enough to enable you to use the sweep technique. It is very useful to knock enemies down and set up a finishing blow. There are some other rules that you should be aware of. Two-handed weapons in defensive grip increase your parry against frontal attacks but decrease it against side attacks. It also decreases damage and imposes a penalty on wild swings. You are very unlikely to actually use a two-handed axe or mace for defensive purposes, so this grip is really useful. What you should really look into is beat, a strength-based feint variant introduced on page 100 of GURPS Martial Arts. The downside is that it only penalizes one defense, but here's the catch. If you have high strength and wield a heavy weapon, most opponents will rely on dodge. Parrying is dangerous due to the chance of weapon breakage. Blocking is dangerous as well, because you might just either cut through the shield or break the shield in a couple of strong hits. Dodge is usually the lowest defense, but penalizing it with a beat is difficult. You have to grapple or hook the target. So if you can penalize dodge, you can do that. Even if your opponent blocks or parries, you can use beat to greatly penalize that defense and force him to rely on either dodge or risk damaging his weapon or shield again. Normal feints are also good, because if you take some time to set up an accurate attack, you might finish the enemy in a single hit. Since you are using an unbalanced weapon that also becomes unready after attacking, you should also worry about your defense. You should have high strength, and your weapon is cheap, so consider investing your leftover money into good armor. Alternatively, remember that wielding two-handed weapon does not mean that you cannot use a shield. GURPS Low-Tech Companion 2 has rules for gauge use, using your shield with no hands while it's hanging on the neck strap. It's less effective than using a shield normally, but still much better than nothing. You should also remember that you probably have other party members. Two-handed axes and maces work much better with friends, who can distract the enemy or protect you when you are taking that goddamn ready maneuver after swinging your weapon. If you take the teamwork perk, you can even have your ally feint an enemy and transfer the benefits to you, which is great. As you can see, this weapon category is not that simple to use. It's probably not a good choice for new players, but experienced players should be able to get much more out of this seemingly underwhelming weapon choice. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.